Hello. Well, how annoying was that? Somebody said, do your live Facebook thing in the event you created, which is what I did. And but I couldn't see anybody making comments. Now nobody's making any comments here either. So if you are watching this now, do please type something in, just to say who you are, just say hi or something so I know, because this technology drives you nuts, doesn't it? There's so many different buttons you can press and so many different ways to go. Lawrence, Rita, we are, hooray, at least one person is watching this. Hundreds said they were going to watch it. Thousands have been watching the previous ones. So I really screwed up and I do apologize. And then I discovered that I was distorted as well with all sorts of pixelation in a rather interesting sort of way. But that's obviously the broadband connection. I can't control that. But I also discovered, really annoyingly, that the video stopped. Just luckily, thank heavens, as you came out of meditation. Otherwise, I would have been responsible for sending you off into the other world and not bringing you back. So, and Pat's there. Pat, I even talked about you in the video and it hasn't recorded it. So I'll have to talk about you again. I'll tell you what happened. So in that last recording, I just recounted a little bit of what we did at the weekend in a way that you could use as a meditation, or you could have just listened to it as a description of what we got up to, which was absolutely magical and wonderful. What I said was we were coming out of this description, which was a meditation, and the rest of the morning we had Simon Emerson, who was the founder of the band The Africelt Sound System, who was interviewed by Matt McCabe. He's a fascinating guy. He's a Druid too. And he talked about, amongst many things, he talked about how the track Release, which is on the second Africelt Sound System album, was channeled by Sinead O'Connor. It's a beautiful song. And a very sad thing had happened. One of the band members had died. And not band members, the family of the band members, somebody in the family had died. So everybody was very gloomy. And she tuned into this person and sang from them, as it were. And it's a very haunting, beautiful song. It starts off, don't argue amongst yourselves, because they were starting to argue in that grieving process that can often develop conflict as well. And then he mentioned how it had become, this song is now part of the British GCSE syllable in our education system, which is an incredible achievement. Later that evening, we crowned him as an honorary bard of the order, because musicians and artists and poets are very important. Pat Booker liked the distortion. She said, it makes your psychedelic. That's what I was thinking as my face was all going mad. It was kind of rather interesting in a bizarre way. And my dad called himself a Druid. Hooray! So yes, so we had an interview with Simon, and then what we did is two guys who have founded the British Pilgrimage Trust gave us a wonderful presentation about the art of pilgrimage. What an exciting thing it is to do, just to set off and go on pilgrimage. And they sang songs together. They were really wonderful, tremendous guys. And pilgrimage is dear to many of us, most Druids, I think. And after all, we had made a pilgrimage to Glastonbury to be there. And then lunch, and then in the afternoon, 3 women gave presentations: Lorraine Cadier, Kerry Lee, and Helen Woodsford Dean. And they all gave presentations around the theme of the magic of the landscape. What is it about the landscape? Why does it affect us so strongly? What influence does it have on us, and what influence can we have on it, and so on. And then we finished the afternoon with Peter Owen Jones, who many of you will know from his TV programs like Around the World in 80 Faiths and Extreme Pilgrim. And he gave us a rousing talk about the environment and the spiritual dimensions of the ecological crisis that we face. And then, like all good Druids, we parted, and we had a wonderful evening. It's always a component in Druid gatherings called the Eisteddfod, Welsh term, which is poetry, music, song, and dance. And so we sang and danced into the wee small hours and finished our day in that way. And I decided to share it with you, partly because I'm full of it, because it was such a fantastic weekend, and partly because I know that many of you would like to come but can't come for reasons of distance and so on. So I thought this was a nice way of doing it. And also because some people were asking me to do a longer meditation. In each of these little tea sessions, we've been having a little meditation, but somebody said, do it for longer. So that was a longer meditation. So there you go. And what I wanted to say as well is that Pamela in the land of the long white cloud is having a birthday today, and I want to wish her a very happy birthday. I hope you have a wonderful celebration. I know it's beautifully warm and sunny there. Here in England it's cold and wet and freezing, but I know in New Zealand it's fabulous at the moment, between 25 and 30 degrees. So have a fabulous birthday. And then I mentioned Pat, who had the nerve, the cheek, to ask me about the books on my shelf. And I have to admit that when I was arranging them, there was chaos in this room, I have to say, before I started doing these things. And I felt embarrassed about the chaos. I thought I better arrange my books. And I thought that maybe I should choose all the most bizarre books and put them there, and so that people could be, while they were looking at the video, they could be trying to read the titles on my shelves. But what I thought I'd do is perhaps in each of these little broadcasts, I would wander over to the shelves and pick a book out, and let's see what we get. If I walk over and pick one out, what have I got? Oh, I got the one that I picked before, which is the recording that didn't record. This is the tome that I found. A marvellous book. You'd all absolutely love it. It's called High Weirdness by Mail, a directory of the fringe, mad prophets, crackpots, kooks and true visionaries, by Reverend Ivan Stang. And I've had the privilege of hearing Reverend Ivan Stang delivering a sermon, or rather a rant, at the OBOD summer camp once in the States, and it was hilarious and very, very, very rude. And if you Google the Church of the Subgenius, which is a really nutty and clever and funny sort of spoof religion, really, Reverend Ivan Stang was leading it. Perhaps he still is. You'll find it there. And so thank you, Pat, for suggesting we had a look at the books, because there are a lot of very strange books on those shelves. So, aren't all sermons divine rants? Yes, Kate, but Reverend Ivan Stang's rants move into another stratosphere. I don't think any broadcasting channel could even begin to broadcast one of his particular rants. So I'm going to, it's funny, I was doing the last film and I felt truly bereft when I looked at the screen, having done that meditation and saw nobody there. It was a very strange experience of sort of suddenly being alone in a room when you thought you were with a nice, friendly crowd of people. And now I can see the friendly crowd of people, so I don't want to stop. But maybe I can just finish with a sort of crystallization of sort of what I thought about Glastonbury. I gave a talk in Glastonbury on the Friday evening. Why is it? If any of you who've been to Glastonbury will know, it's quite an unprepossessing little town. I mean, there are plenty of prettier, more attractive, more awe-inspiring towns. I mean, nearby Wells, with its cathedral, for instance, is beautiful, much prettier, much more impressive. Canterbury, Bath. There are many towns and villages in England, but somehow Glastonbury draws people from all over the world in pilgrimage, either very deliberate pilgrimage or sort of semi-conscious pilgrimage, just knowing that it's a special magical spot. And I first came to Glastonbury 47 years ago, almost 50 years ago, when I was initiated into the order, and my Druid teacher, Owen, took me to Glastonbury in order to do the initiation on Glastonbury tour. And that was when I was 18. He first came to Glastonbury when he was 18, when he went to the first Glastonbury, one of the earliest Glastonbury festivals that was put on by a composer called Rutland Borton, who composed operas and other music, and so that's almost 100 years ago that he went there. And I think the reason Glastonbury brings people together is because it's a place of meeting. It has this extraordinary, the extraordinary gathering of legends that come from pagan pre-Christian times and from Christian times. And so it brings together these streams of spiritual influence. You have the story of the Grail there, these stories that the Grail is perhaps hidden in Chalice Hill. You have this incredible piece of landscape of this very rugged tor with this tower on it that was part of it was brought down in 1275 by an earthquake, something that happens a lot in New Zealand, but on this side of the planet doesn't happen a lot at all by any means, certainly not to bring a building down, but it happened on top of the tor. And then next to it is this beautiful feminine rounded hill like the belly of the goddess. And then in between this wonderful valley, between the god and the goddess, if you like, where Chalice Well Garden is and Chalice Well. And then the cover of the well, where it has these two circles on the cover and they overlap. Again, this idea of two things coming together, god and goddess, pagan and Christian, all any kind of duality, brought together. And then where they meet, this extraordinary symbol of the fish, just quite a simple symbol like that, which is also like the aura and is depicted as the mandorla sometimes in sacred art, which some say is a symbol of the philosopher's stone, of Christ, of the vulva of the goddess. It has all this symbology around it. And so Glastonbury is a place of bringing together, of union. And I think, we're living in times when the opposite dynamic is really powerful. I mean, we look in America and certainly and in Europe and particularly in Britain with the whole Brexit thing and so on, where a process of separating and of setting people against each other or of separating people seems to be happening. This move towards the far right and the counterbalance of the far left and so on. And it's upsetting because I think whilst separation is a natural process and conflict is natural after all, what we yearn for is union, because we know that in union new things can be born. Integration, coming together, union. Doesn't mean to say you have to be stuck together. You notice that the two circles on the well cover at Glastonbury aren't totally overlapping. They are separate. They are slightly separated like that, which is a wonderful symbol of relationship, really. Where if you and I are in relationship, and I am represented by a circle, and you are represented by a circle, we don't want to overlap totally where everything we think and do and say is identical. We want to have our uniqueness and our individuality, but we also want some overlap where we're of like mind and of like heart. And that, I think, is the great draw of Glastonbury, the great pull of Glastonbury. It has a wonderful vibe, as Sonia is saying. Richard is saying, I found a peace in Glastonbury that I've never found elsewhere. And then, yes, the Red Spring, Sabrina, there's the Red Spring and the White Spring. I mean, how magical is that? You've got the White Spring, which, can you believe this? The source of the White Spring is in the Pennard Sands, which is north of the Bristol Channel. So it's beneath the sands, up by the Mumbles, on the other side of the Bristol Channel. And the rain is falling on the southern part of Wales. It's coming down the Pennard Sands, under the Bristol Channel, then all the way across to Glastonbury, and then coming out in Chalice Well. I mean, how extraordinary is that? This white, the Red Spring, this chalybeate water because it's got iron in it. And so it's got that sort of iron taste. And so it's associated, of course, with blood, with the feminine. And then you have the White Spring, which has a source, I believe, much closer to hand. So you've got far and near, local and more distant and so on. And the White Spring and the streams come together in the place of meeting. They don't come together on another part of Glastonbury. They come together in the valley where the Tor and the Chalice Hill meet, where God and Goddess meet. That is magic. And so Glastonbury, is like a beacon. And in the meditation that I did on the video there, I talked about this idea of the seven hills around Glastonbury, with chapels and hermits living in them. And John Michel speculated that they were originally Druid hermits living in on these 7 hills, who later became Christian priests, and then later these small chapels were built. But whoever was living there, these were spiritual places, these islands of Mere and Martinsea and what else? Nyland and Panborough and God's Island and Avalon. And what a wonderful idea. And then John Michel notices that they match the 7 stars of the Great Bear in the heavens. So there's this wonderful mirroring, as above, so below. These 7 stars in the sky, the Great Bear, important to so many indigenous cultures. And then down on the earth, and of course in those days Glastonbury was flooded, so there'd be water everywhere, these little islands, and there would be villages set on stilts, and people would boat from one place to another. What a magical spot. And as Richard's saying, the water flows from north to south, from the place of mystery to the place of passion and creativity. That's a lovely idea, yes. The water's coming from the north, flowing down to the south, and the north is traditionally associated with the place of mystery, the place of the winter solstice, of the Great Bear as well. And then the south is the place of passion and creativity and manifestation. It comes out of the rock, and we can drink it, and it can affect our bodies. That's absolutely beautiful. It's a magical place. I'm full of the magic of Glastonbury now, and it's so interesting. Do you know, when I gave a talk I gave a talk in the little United Reformed Church up on the road for the Library of Avalon, which is a tremendous project, and I asked how many people, and there were about 70 people in the audience, and I asked how many people were born in Glastonbury. Only one person put their hand up. All 69 other people had been called to Glastonbury. I asked how many people were drawn by economic reasons, like they'd been offered a job there or something like that. And of course, everybody laughed. I think one person. No, I don't think nobody actually went there for economic reasons. And isn't that marvelous in this world where we're dominated by considerations of economy, that everybody in that hall that evening had gone to a place not for economic reasons, but because the Spirit called them, their souls were called there. So thank you all for being there. I'm sorry I messed it up earlier on this evening. I'll try and get it right next week. But I do love doing these broadcasts, because there's a real feel of connection. And as I look at the comments come up in a kind of strip on the right hand side, and it's just lovely, because a lot of I see your faces as well in these little by the message. There's a black cat who's watching at the moment, Sandy Rust. And it's great. And there's somebody in Kentucky, and there's somebody in, Anyway, so look, lots and lots of love to you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll do this again next Monday, and I'll bring more tea, and I hope we can get it right next time. Okay, but what I do, just so you know this, I put this up on YouTube and kind of all the rest of it, so that if your reception was bad and you couldn't hear it, you can watch it again. So, okay, au revoir. Great to see you.